everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Raphael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Raphael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Good morning, Dr. Ann. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm fine. How are you?
Exceptional, getting better every day.
Great. Great to
Yes.
see you.
Yeah, so, wow, we have so much to talk about. You have been in the educational world for 27 years, probably even longer than that, right?
Yes.
I'd love to get to know you a little bit more. Let's get down into where did you grow up? Who influenced you when you were like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old? Let's talk about that first and then go up from there incrementally, if you don't mind.
Sure. I grew up in central Pennsylvania. It's called the coal region. So it's a small, kind of a bunch of small towns in central Pennsylvania in the United States. And I am the youngest of 7. So we had a big family, and I have 6 siblings that are in 8 years, and then I'm 8 years younger. So I was a little bit of a whoops. They weren't quite expecting me.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I grew up, and kind of small town America that a lot of people, I think, a lot of white people are familiar with. And I was very athletic. I had ADHD that wasn't diagnosed until much later, and then also post-traumatic stress disorder from a car accident, and that happened when I was about 4 years old. When I was 4 years old.
Wow.
So so my childhood had some big things and a lot of just average things. We were able to play outside and run and not, we came home when the lights came on and the street lights, or we actually had a fire alarm that would go off in the town. It was a siren, and at 9:00 every night it would go off, and all the kids knew they had to be home by then. So it was your signal to get home quick. So yeah.
We didn't have that in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
So you said something that made me wonder. You said what white people would know. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, I think the majority of people in where I grew up were white, and white Catholic Protestant. We didn't even have Jewish. We didn't have people who were Jewish in our neighborhoods. So we had a lot of immigrants that were even just in our neighborhood, a lot of Italians that were, first generation. They grew up in Italy. So, we had a lot of pretty vanilla in terms of we didn't have a whole lot of diversity, other than ethnic. And even then it was kind of limited, very Catholic. And so, people who we had one actually in our area, I'd say maybe a 40 square mile, probably bigger. We had one black family and another family that was mixed. So that was it when I was growing up.
So when did you start to get into a more of a diversified community, if you will?
Yeah. Luckily, my oldest sister, who is 16 years older than me, she was dating, she lived in Princeton, New Jersey, and she was dating a guy who was black. And she came home and told my parents, and my mom was crying. My dad wasn't. And I was like, what is mom upset about? And my dad's like, Paula's dating a black guy, and there is no different. My dad was really adamant. He was very upset with my mom. And he was in the military. He was in the Air Force. I'm sorry, in the Navy. And so he just had different experiences.
Mm,
And my mom had grown up in our hometown, never lived anywhere else. So she just never had known, had never met a black person. Once she actually met them, I mean, my mom was amazing. She's super sweet. And so once she met them, that was it. It was like their family. It was never, ever, ever even a question again.
mm,
So that was pretty early. I was, I guess maybe, and I don't think I was 10 yet. I was still pretty young. And so, and I remember watching Roots on TV. This was, kind of dating myself, but in
mhm,
the 70s, that's how you watch TV was, those series that would come up on TV. You watched it, and we watched the whole series as a family. And I just vividly remember that being so, just powerful, and just
mhm,
it really impacted me in a positive way, in that I wanted to be an advocate. I wanted to get to know black people more. I just, I didn't feel their pain, in terms of, obviously I couldn't have even understood it, though. It just, I had a lot of empathy for it, and for
mhm,
what they'd been through. And even, and then even I had gotten to know people from roller skating. We went roller skating, and there were black families that came, and were roller skating, and I got to be good friends with them. In fact, to this day, I still have a couple that I'm in touch with, and so just, I didn't care if anybody said anything. I just was like, I want to be around people with more diverse experiences. And so that was kind of pretty early on. And then I went to college, and I met more people. And then I actually moved away. I went to school, and I started off pretty local, half an hour away from home, Bloomsburg University. And then I ended up going to San Francisco State, partially financially, and also I wanted to have different experiences. So
mhm.
yeah, I finished my schooling in San Francisco and just loved it. I had my group of friends. We were like the big blue marble, just very diverse. So I loved that. Loved that experience.
Mm. So when we think about even what your dad said to your
Mm,
mom,
yeah.
you kind of like said it really quick, but it really resonated with me when your dad told your mom,
Mhm.
they're just regular people. They're like you and me.
Yeah.
But so many people, especially if you were, I guess, confined, right,
Yeah.
to certain things, and the unknown is always scary.
Yeah.
But if we become more open to knowing, to understanding, because it doesn't matter the race, the color, the religion,
Mhm.
the beliefs, we don't know what somebody's been through unless we go through it ourselves. I saw the show Roots too, and I saw the whole thing, and it definitely impacted me as well,
Mhm.
because I grew up in a neighborhood where we were all of different shades.
Mm.
I'm Spanish, but I didn't look it because I have platinum blonde hair as a kid. I have blue eyes.
Wow.
And just time did this, right? Time changed me, my coloring. But
Don't we all?
yeah, right. So what wound up happening is I had friends of all nationalities,
Mhm.
whether they were from Africa, from Cambodia, from Nigeria, from Spain, from Puerto Rico, from the
Mhm.
US. I had friends who's may even have had Quaker in their relatives. So
Yeah.
it was pretty intense. So we all, here's the craziest thing that was beautiful to me is that I never saw color. I
Yeah.
never saw a difference.
Mhm.
They were just my friends.
Yeah.
And that was beautiful. And when I saw the movie as a kid, Roots, I was like, how can anybody treat somebody so differently and be so mean to them and beat
Mhm.
them. And it was a very, very powerful show.
Mhm.
So that had a lot of impact, obviously, on both of us, right?
Mhm.
And on many, many people.
Yeah.
When we think of growing up in a society where there's so much still
Mm.
inequality, where and it doesn't just have to be on skin color, it can be on
Mhm.
ethnicity, it could be on religion, it could be on male to female.
Mhm.
It still breaks my heart that
Mhm.
we don't see each other as just humans.
I know.
That's all we are. We're just humans, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. As a woman and having my own experiences a lot, unfortunately, of that,
Mm,
and so it's I've always had a ton of respect for Black women,
mm,
just because I feel like they have been through so much and are so just strong. They are
mm,
really the cornerstone of a family. And so, it just, yeah, it breaks my heart when they don't get the respect that they deserve, just
right,
Black
right.
people in general, people of color. So,
Mm, definitely. So, education,
mm.
that's your jam, right?
Yep. That's my jam. Yeah.
That is your jam. So,
Yeah.
what when did you realize that you really had a knack for it? Was it
Mm.
when you were young? Was it later on in college? Was it after college? When did that really trigger for you?
Mm. Yeah, it's actually been kind of an interesting journey, because I didn't actually start off in education, not
Mm,
directly. So when I was 4 years old, I mentioned I was in a car accident, went through a windshield. I remember all of
mm,
it in great
wow,
depth. I remember how it impacted me in school, and, uh, they also had me in the hospital for a week without my family being there, so that
wow,
further traumatized me. And then when I
wow.
got home, it was 1970. We just didn't talk about things.
Mm,
And so from that, I was an internalizer. I kept things internal. I
mm,
tried to make everything look like it was all great on the outside. And so I got really good at hiding things. And I had a lot of protective factors that were in place for me. Though I was bullied. I remember being bullied. I was really sexually harassed in fourth grade.
wow.
So yeah, so my experiences as a child impacted me. I didn't realize it till much later. And I actually was very, very athletic. I was actually inducted in the Sports Hall of Fame in our area just
Mm.
in 2016 because my mom was pushing me. She's like, "You need to do it. You need to apply." And I was like, So anyway, because I didn't feel like I deserved it, but which is a little bit of what I got from all of the trauma. And
Mm,
so I had a lot of negative self-worth, and that again really impacted me. And I always felt like something was wrong with me because I really ended up having full-blown post-traumatic stress disorder.
mm,
And then when I actually was in physical therapy initially. So I my bachelor's degree was in physical therapy. Loved, part of it was I had had knee surgery and just really kind of wanted to, I just loved that field and athletics and all of that. And so I got into that. And then I was I was actually working a lot in schools. And I ended up, I was an athletic trainer because I loved really being in the class, being in schools with kids
mm,
and just getting to know the kids. And I was kind of almost like their counselor as they came and talked to me about so many different things. I was a safe person. I was somebody who took care of them.
mm,
So that helped me. I felt good about myself that I was doing something good. And I just felt like I automatically was natural at that. And then I ended up working with kids with some severe behavior problems and really just like, oh my goodness, I got them. Even though I didn't really have major behavior problems as a kid, I was more, like I said, I internalized my behavior problems. So I hurt myself more than I hurt others.
mm,
So made it easier for me to fly under the radar. And as I was, working with these kids, I was natural at it. And that actually was what, even in physical therapy, all my internships I did in schools with kids with severe disabilities. I just loved working with those kids. And so that really was the trigger, kids with behavior problems, that really led me to getting into more of education. That's where I pursued. I got my master's in special education. I moved actually back to Pennsylvania, and just that was really the piece. And part of the reason I got into that is because I wanted to figure myself out, like what's wrong with me, and because that's always what I thought, because I had PTSD and ADHD. I always thought I was just annoying, anxiety, and so that kind of really led me into education. And I worked with kids with autism, on the autism spectrum, and kids with I hate the classification, but it's emotional disturbance. So those
Mm.
kind of emotional support classrooms. And I just really loved working with these kids, and worked with a lot of kids who'd been through trauma, though again, early on, I didn't fully have the connection between trauma and disabilities even. And then it really, it all snowballed from there. I just continued because I just wanted to learn. I wanted to learn how to better support the kids that I work with. I just had a hunger for it. And then what I found was that, I had bosses that were asking me to do training, and I'm like, okay, don't I, how am I qualified? I guess it was a natural thing. And I realized that a lot of teachers, especially regular ed teachers, don't get a whole lot of like behavior management, classroom management training in college. And
Mm.
so that really, I gravitated towards, I understand the teachers and I understand the kids, because I had that, both roles. And so that really kind of motivated me to just really want to become a trainer for teachers. And so really the last 20 years, that's what I've been doing, a trainer. So I do training, professional development, and also coaching, and really getting in the classroom with the teachers and helping them to be more successful. That, really helped me feel a lot of value. I was naturally good at it. And I felt like I was not only helping the teachers, I was helping the kids.
Mm.
Because what I found was that if the teachers don't have the skills, and if they're not able to manage their own, emotions and challenges, that's gonna, spill over to the kids. Absolutely. And
Mm.
so, that's kind of what really pushed me to be really where I am now. Um, and just continue to learn. I had my own healing early on in the same process as well. And I think the more I focus on my own healing and overcoming my childhood trauma, and really learning more about myself and learning how to take care of myself better, um, put up healthy boundaries, self-care. I did meditation. I did a lot of, my faith was really growing at that time, and focused on healing myself. And so that kind of helped me to realize that I just want to I want to help others. I want to,
Mm.
whatever, if it's one teacher that I can help, you know, um, go from there.
Yeah, I think one of the things that a lot of people may not have caught on, and I want to just bring that up to the forefront, is empathy.
Mm, yeah.
Because you went through a traumatic experience. Do you still have it? That's two questions, right? You had PTSD.
Mhm.
Did you get rid of it, or do you still have it, and are you coping with it?
I don't know whether the diagnosis ever goes away. And I do have some things, like I'm especially triggered, and it's so much less, but I am triggered if kids are in danger, which
Mm.
I think a lot of, especially moms, often it's like an innate thing. And I think that I'm more in tune to that. So I'm a little bit hyper vigilant on that, but I'm like, that's a good thing. So I've learned a lot of coping skills so that I may still have the diagnosis, and it just really doesn't impact me, though it's impacted my physical health.
Mm.
I have 4 autoimmune diseases though again, the more I've worked on myself psychologically, mentally, emotionally, that's had a positive impact on my physical health as well.
Mm.
We're whole beings. We can't isolate
Right,
ourselves.
right,
So,
right. You
yeah.
know, one of the things that, and when you said that you feel it when there's a child who's in danger.
Mhm.
One of the things I teach martial arts, so I teach martial arts to
Mhm.
from 3.5 all the way up to
Mhm.
102 years old. So when I see something immediately, it triggers me.
Mhm.
And one of the things I said to the kids, I'll say to the kids, don't do that. And they look at me and they're like, yeah, I'm a dad. I see everything. And so,
Yeah.
but one of the things that a lot of people, but it depends. I mean, there's moms and there's dads out there who are very vigilant when
Mhm.
it comes to the safety of a child. But then
Yeah.
there are those who are not.
Yeah.
We got to remember that. Just the title does not mean you're vigilant. The title is just, listen, you were lucky and fortunate enough to be a parent. That doesn't make you the best parent. We
Yeah.
all have to work to get that. We all have to be vigilant for every child, either under our care or
Mhm.
every child we come across. So, for
Yeah.
example, if I'm walking down the street and I see a child in danger, I'm going to run to it.
Yeah.
If I see a parent not treating a child right, I'm going to say something, even if
Oh,
that
yeah.
parent will chew me out. I really don't care. It's
Yeah.
not the parent that I'm concerned about, it's the child.
Yeah.
That's just me, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And, it's so true in that, it's it you just I know I'm the same. When I see parents doing great things, I just am especially, you
Mm,
know, uh, I focus on making sure they know that they're doing really good things.
right.
And, I also know that a lot of parents are hurting. They have a lot of trauma themselves,
Mm,
and that they may not even realize. And, there's generational trauma that literally changes how our DNA is expressed. And so unless we really do a lot of hard work and really kind of make those changes for ourselves, that's gonna pass down to kids. And
mm,
so, you know, so yes, trauma changes our DNA, though when we really focus on healing it, that healing can pass down to our kids positively. And so, it's so important for us to kind of break those cycles. But I recognize, hurt people.
mm,
It's we don't, I know in my own family and, my experiences that people we didn't know what we didn't know back
right.
then, like 1970 car accident, we didn't have
No seatbelts.
seatbelts, we didn't have child safety laws,
And
we were
kids rode in the front.
right. That's what I was sitting on my mom's lap when I
Yeah.
went through the windshield.
Mm, wow,
So,
wow.
yeah, we didn't know what
Yeah,
we didn't.
you know, it's very interesting because you had this traumatic experience, and I almost died a couple of times myself, and I fell from heights.
Mm,
One, I was in a coma for like 3 weeks, but and another one, I was I passed out. All these different. I've fallen from a couple of several heights as a
wow.
kid, right? As a kid. As an adult, I'm not afraid of heights. I will climb a ladder like as fast as and up but I never had, if you will, PTSD from those accidents, which
Wow.
is pretty interesting. I mean, the time that I felt from 3 stories, if I didn't fall into a basin, and the last thing I remember is hitting the water and looking up, and the whole thing turned red because it was my blood. And then I wake up 3 weeks later. But that didn't even scare me of heights. It's pretty interesting.
Wow.
It's pretty interesting
Wow.
that I'm not afraid of heights. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if it's a
Well,
good thing or a bad thing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, our bodies and our brains know what we need, and
Mm,
everybody has different experiences. I had, thunderstorms because it was storming at the time, and being in cars with someone I didn't feel I was safe with were triggers for me
Right.
as a kid. Now I love thunderstorms. I actually moved back to Pennsylvania, moved back to
Right.
the East Coast because I miss thunderstorms. I love them,
Wow.
whereas they used to terrify me. And I love driving. I don't have any fear of driving unless I am a passenger and someone's tailgating. That's a
Yes.
little bit my husband, and I'm like, I could feel my foot going through
Mm.
the floor of the car. But yeah, it's kind of interesting how our brains protect us even if we don't recognize that that's what's happening.
Right.
And there may be one person too that maybe just helped us to overcome any of
Mm.
that trauma as well, that it can be subtle, that again, like I said, we don't even realize how that person had such a big impact on us till maybe much later. So yeah, that's really
Gotcha.
interesting that you shared that. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. My husband fell 30 feet off of a roof, by the way, and survived and had lots and lots of internal damage, though he's back on roofs and doing, yeah, same, no fear. I'm like, okay.
It's funny when I climb, and sometimes I'll climb without a ladder.
Yeah.
I'm like, somebody will walk in and I'm like, I'm up on top, and they're like, "Oh my God, are you okay? You're gonna be okay." I'm like, "Okay, no biggie." But when we think about what you've done with your life, what you've seen, you have made it your mission, I guess, right? As an educational coach, a leader who has you've dedicated your career, but you didn't have to, right? You could have just been a teacher. You could have been, but you're helping schools become safer.
Mhm.
Why is that so important to you?
Yeah. You know, 1999 obviously was the Columbine shooting. As I was 2003, really started doing the training and coaching in schools and helping kind of change the systems and support. I worked at the state level, so that just working on schools on a larger basis, I was able to see that you can really have an impact for not just one individual, but for an entire school. Yes, there are going to be those kids that are still struggling, though. So seeing that kind of systems change of an entire environment has had such a big impact on me. And then I was a state project director. I ended up getting a job as a state project director for Safe Schools, Healthy Students, which came out of the Sandy Hook and the Columbine shootings. And this was in 2013. And so with that, we were kind of really given permission to, um, you know, be creative, think outside of the box. What can we do differently so that we're not just kind of sticking with the status quo? And luckily, my ADHD brain actually kind of helps with that. I'm really good at seeing the big picture and kind of connecting the dots. One of my nicknames is Spider Woman because I like to connect the dots for people and help to, figure out what the challenges are. And a lot of times, because things are so disconnected, that alone can really create huge challenges for schools, for communities. We're disconnected, family and youth from schools. Like those are all dots that we need to connect. And so, as we've continued to have school shootings, that just, it's further, I just understand what trauma is happening to these kids and to the adults. And it just, again, it's kind of, I don't want them to experience. It's that empathy that is continuing in my own experiences. And I see it, I understand it. And so I want to help them. In addition, I've also had my own family members who have struggled. In fact, just this past Saturday, we actually had to bury my nephew because he died of an overdose.
Oh,
And so,
sorry to hear that.
he struggled with mental illness and substance use disorders, and I tried helping him, and I continued to hit barriers. Even though I worked at the state level, I knew who to talk to. I was still we still have so many barriers, and it's frustrating. And so my own experiences, and then with our family, I had to keep going, and I just had to keep pushing. So I'm involved with the state mental health planning council, and we had a meeting yesterday, and I shared with them, and told them about the death of my nephew, and they know I'm on this committee because of him. And so
Mm.
I'm not going to get off this committee just because. So
Right.
yesterday I was so frustrated just listening to continued silos of systems. And I ended up writing letters to every single one of my state senators, you know, everybody, all the legislators who support me, not support me, but where I live. I wrote a letter yesterday to them all. Like, look, something has to change.
Mm.
And it's that helps me feel like I have more power, that I can do something. I can't just sit and watch, because I know what I experienced, and I just don't want that to happen to others. And so I've got to talk about it. I see it every day. I see it with friends, family. It's just so rampant right now. And I love what you do, because you're helping people to take back that power, and
Mhm.
give them something to feel that they can contribute. That's looking for something positive. There's something called post-traumatic growth. It's when there's a trauma, being able to use that kind of that mess for your message, to make it, use it for something good, is helps you to grow stronger. So the more I help others, I also feel stronger about my own health and wellness, as
Mm.
long as I'm making sure I'm putting my own oxygen mask on first,
Yes.
and taking care of myself, because that's
Mhm.
another thing that I really had to learn was, what do I need to do for myself first? So I just continually try to help others grow, which is the reason I wrote my book as well. So
So, one of the things that I do is I work with kids with autism.
mm, mhm,
I teach them martial arts. I teach them movement. I teach them how to start to deal with things. I
yeah,
had one kid whose dad, many, many years ago, he didn't tell me his kid was autistic at all. He
mm,
said, "Can my son try a class?" I said, "Sure." The kid comes in and runs for 45 minutes, just runs all over.
mm,
Nobody can catch him. And I just said, just let him run.
yeah,
And then afterwards, I said to the dad, I said, "By the way, I cannot have him in class because this is not
yeah,
productive for him. It has no place for him." I said, "I could do one-on-ones with him.
mm,
That's different."
mhm,
So the kid, when we finally ended class, he lined up with the other kids. I'm like, okay, so he kind of understands that there is some structure. Okay.
yeah,
So I took him and I looked, I said, "Can you look at me?" He wouldn't look at me.
mm,
His eyes were darting everywhere. I
mhm,
actually held his head like this, about 2 feet away.
mm,
He still wouldn't look at me. I put
yeah,
my hands to his eyes like this. So I literally went nose to nose with the kid. Still, his eyes were darting everywhere. I said,
yeah,
"Okay."
yeah,
I said, "Well, I can work with him one on one, but we have to have certain protocols that have to come into place.
yeah,
He's got to be in a uniform, so he understands he's going somewhere special. He
mhm,
understands that there's work." And
mhm,
then it took like 3 months.
mm,
In class, they call me Sifu, which means teacher in Chinese. He would never say anything. All of a sudden, he came in one day, sat down, changed his shoes, and looked me in the eyes. And he said, "Hi, Sifu." I was blown away. His
wow,
mother was in shock. She's like, "Who is this kid? He's never said hi to anybody."
yeah,
And then from then
wow,
on, I think he was with me about 6, 7 years.
yeah,
And then the family moved away to Boston. But what wound up happening is one day she came by and she goes, "Oh, I'm visiting family." And I said, well, how's he doing? I said, how's Stephen? And she goes, he's good, but we lost him the other day. I'm like, oh no. I got terrified. She goes, yeah, he just took off. We were shopping and he just went off on his own. And I'm like, she goes, yeah, we lost him for like 45 minutes. I'm like, oh, you guys was, she goes, yeah, he just went doing things. We found him in the store. He was looking at stuff.
Oh
Oh
my
my God. But
goodness.
they had a bracelet on him. So at least had it gone longer, they would have found them.
Yeah.
But when, like right now, I'm working with a kid who's actually 22 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And he can't be in a regular class with all the other kids. So we do privates. When
Right.
his mom came, she just wanted to do once a week. Then she went to twice a week. Now she's 3 times a week with him.
Wow.
And she gave up. He goes to PT. She's like, you've done more for him.
Mhm.
And I think it was 5 months
Mhm.
than he has ever had in his whole life. And he's
Mm.
been with PT since he was like 1. And
Wow.
this is 21 years he's been with PT. You've had him do things that even the PT guy was, what's he doing differently?
Yeah.
That she eventually got rid of PT and she said, I'm sorry I have to go, but I'm going to keep him going to where he's getting the more help. So
Yeah.
when we think about empathy, I definitely employ that anytime I work with a kid who, it breaks my heart that they can't function like you and I, that
Mhm.
they don't get the understanding. I've
Mhm.
worked with kids who bang their heads, who
Mhm.
hit themselves,
Yeah.
who just, they have tics, they have all these different things. But
Mhm.
it breaks my heart when I'm like, there's got to be something we can do for them. So
Mhm.
every
They
time
trust
when
you. They trust you. You develop that relationship and they trust. So
yeah,
that's
so
powerful.
when it comes to having somebody like that, for example, this kid will come in one day and he'll be angry as anything. And I'm like, oh, we're not doing martial arts today.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, he's all angry. And I'm like, we're going to meditate. And I want your anger. It's okay to be angry, but you need to learn to channel it. So we
Mhm.
have this thing, this bag. It's called Bob. It looks like a man. And I go, you're going to go hit Bob and let all the anger out. So he'll hit it for 10 minutes. I'm like, you still done? He goes, no, he's so angry. I'm like, okay, now we're going to meditate. And the first time he did it, he was so angry that we literally meditated for about half hour.
Yeah.
He was exhausted.
Oh,
When
I'm
he left,
sure. Yeah.
he was a different, his mother was like, oh, he went home, he went to sleep.
Yeah.
This
That's
was
awesome.
because he allowed the anger to truly go all the way through. And
Mhm.
I taught him how to channel it differently.
Right.
So it was pretty
Rather than
intense for
stuffing
him.
it. That's often what we try to do. We try to stuff our emotions. So you're allowing them to use it in a positive way. So
Mhm.
we have a lot of similarities, whether
Yeah,
you
yeah,
realize it or not. So
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
great. Thank you for
Well,
sharing that.
what winds up happening is Columbine and all these other school shootings.
Mhm.
There has to be more legislature. There has to be more things in place. When I go to court, when I got divorced, I had to go through this whole system just to get inside the courtroom.
Mhm.
I know people are all up in arms about why do we have secure, but if I have to go to court and I have to go through this gate, if you will, of 3 security guards, metal detector, all these things, why can't we protect our kids the
Yeah.
same way? Yes, it's going to cost more, but guess what? Are their lives worth it? Meanwhile, we have tons of money we give out to other countries, and we're complaining that it's going to cost too much money to keep our kids secure.
Mm.
But meanwhile, we'll give billions and billions of dollars to people we don't even know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, a lot of the research is that the security, like metal detectors and all of those things, don't actually work in the long run. They may prevent a gun coming through. So they're, you know, we talk about school safety. There are multiple aspects to it. It's physical safety and emotional safety. And when you have kids who, you know, let's say we put police officers in school, if you have kids who police officers took their dad away or killed their brother, you know, and those are their experiences, then seeing a first responder, such as a police officer, may actually be a trigger for them, you know, and that having that, the research is really pretty clear that if you just focus on that physical aspect, you're not going to see the changes. That's, you know, that's kind of one of my frustrations, is that we spend a lot of time and energy and we say there's physical safety, we've got to harden schools, and we ignore all the other aspects, that kids are stressed, that teachers are stressed. Teachers are leaving the field like crazy numbers, that they're just leaving education. And so, you know, that's another passion of mine, is I want to help teachers to feel that they can be more successful and have an impact. So, and I've heard, you know, I've worked with schools where, you know, a lot of active shooter drills, that they've made them so realistic that they were actually traumatizing people by the active shooter drills. So, you know, again, it's if we look at someone and we only look at them physically and we don't address the you know, the other
The
aspects, the mental,
emotional aspect.
emotional, and it, you know, it's basically kind of what you do. Like, you saw that channeling that anger and being able to give them something more productive, a way to do it, and, you know, to channel that anger, had a bigger impact on, you know, them following your instruction for you know, for every other aspect of it. The physical, you saw an improvement in behavior. That's what it is when we look at schools. It's, we have to, you know, so I'm not saying we don't have school, you know, the metal detectors, and I believe that if we do school, you know, really school police officers who are actually employees of the school district are really the best way to go. Because again, if we have a school resource officer who's coming in and they don't really have training, they don't, leadership in the building doesn't have any kind of say in how they do their job. I just have seen, you know, that we just see kids getting arrested. And so it just, it's like, we're missing the boat. So
Yes.
we've got, this is the connecting the dots that drives me nuts. I'm like, okay, so I love, like, I'll work with the school police officers. Let's talk. You tell me, you know, share your experience. And I don't criticize, you know, I'm not going to say, no, you're doing that wrong. Don't do that. Like, that's my approach is, all right, let's all sit down and talk and see how we could do this better and differently, and try to get the voices of everyone. You know, it's when we don't hear others, that alone, that's kind of one of the first things that I really try to do, is let's sit down and listen to each other, because that alone can have a huge impact on the culture and climate of a school. So focus groups, let me hear what you're saying. Let's set up a communication system so that you're actually able to communicate more effectively and efficiently. You know, because we see social media, if, you know, there, people have just explode if somebody says something and they're taking it a totally different way than the person meant it. So, you know, there are just so many pieces, and we spend so much time and money and energy, and as a taxpayer, I get frustrated because yes, there's lots of money even being poured into schools right now, though if it's not, like, let's help them work smarter, not harder. Let's figure out what do they have that's actually working. Let's look at what fits their environment. It's not like everybody has to do a cookie cutter approach. It's, let's develop a framework that is going to help them to function much more effectively and efficiently. So that school police officers are a part of that culture of creating more positive relationships. Let's teach the school police officers how to recognize when someone may be suicidal. They should be part of a crisis team, not just for kids who are having external problem behaviors, but also recognizing how when kids are having external problem behaviors, they may be internally in fight or flight mode.
Mm.
I was doing training for, they had an inner city school district. They had a school police officer. They had a whole police force that was all employees of the district. And when I was doing I did a training, and I do share my story. I had one of the police officers reach out to me personally and sent me an email and said, "Thank you so much for sharing your story and talking about this. I have PTSD." He was also in the military, and police officers are triggered.
Mm.
Again, we have to recognize that we're all human beings, and we have to recognize that, okay, who's being triggered? I've said over the last couple of years, I said to my husband, I'm like, "Ugh, people are responding out of their own trauma all over the
Mhm.
place, because everyone's just like attacking each other." And it's like, oh my goodness. And really, anger is easier than to be sad or feel that they're anxious or out of control. Anger is an easier emotion because society has kind of taught that. Again, like what you don't just teach the physical aspect, you teach all aspects
Mm.
of self-defense and all of those pieces. It's powerful, and it's really the only way that things work. I get frustrated when we're like, let's just throw money at something.
Right.
Like, yes, but let's actually look at what do they already have. Let's not just throw the biggest, best, greatest thing that's new out at people. Let's look at what do they have. Let's make that work. Who are the partners? I would
Mm.
love, if I worked in your school district, I would absolutely bring you into the school. Okay, how can we use your skills,
Mm.
and what can we do? It may not even necessarily be during the school, but maybe it's an after school program that we partner, like, and how can we support families, because families are struggling.
Right.
A lot of these parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles who are raising kids, again, they may have their own trauma. They may not have the skills themselves. They may not have the support. Single parents. How can we do this differently and do it better? So I'm not, I don't like when people are like, let's get money and let's just throw it at them. And that that's kind of one of the grant sites that we did. The first thing they did was they hired a school resource officer. And we struggled the entire time we were working with the district because they were focused more on that physical safety and not the rest of it. And so it's really important that we look at it holistically.
Yeah. One of the things that I agree with you 1,000% as far as not having police at the school is necessarily the right answer, because I don't think every police officer is child friendly. They're
Absolutely.
used to dealing with high level criminals. They're
Yeah.
not used to having empathy. So I would think that it would be a requirement that they go through psychological evaluation.
Mhm.
First, do you even like kids?
That's exactly. I
That's
was gonna
number
say
one.
that. Do you like
And
it?
can you, and then they should be taught the signs of a kid who's struggling, of a kid who is outgoing, but maybe it's a facade where
Yeah,
it's a facade because they're trying to show case maybe what everybody wants to see, but internally they're having this struggle, and then they commit suicide. That
right.
we need to have the training for these people at the
Mhm.
front who are going to be the entrance, the security, where they don't look like a police officer. They look more like a buddy, like, hey, and they say hi to the kids, not like, oh, get in here, put your, go through here. More like, how are you today? How's your day? Did you eat breakfast?
Yeah,
Have an amazing, at the end of the day, have a great day. I look forward. So when we can bring the right people into the mix to secure our kids, That's what I'm talking about. Because
Yep.
I would not, me personally,
Mhm.
I don't want to see police officers who are
Right.
scary looking. I
Yep.
don't want to see a 10-foot guy up there.
Mhm.
Let's bring some women in also, but
Mhm.
well trained. And if a situation calls that they need to literally shoot somebody, that they do it. They don't look to who's in charge. No, they're in charge.
Yep.
Because we had that problem where they wouldn't go into school because they didn't know who was in charge. Guess what? You're in charge.
Yeah.
You're there. Go protect. That's your job. So the
Uvalde,
first job
the
is
Uvalde
to
school.
yeah, but to protect at all levels, not just the
Mhm.
physical, but the
Yep.
mental. So I
Yep.
agree with you 1,000% that we
Yeah.
do need the right people in the mix. But even here's the thing: not everybody who applies to a certain job is qualified. I got to be honest with you. I've
Mhm.
been in situations where I've been at a hospital and I ask myself, these couple of nurses have zero empathy. They're horrible nurses. But
Yeah.
then meanwhile, you'll get other ones that are they're like angels.
Yep.
So we need to really qualify. And
Mhm.
you know what? I'm sorry. There should be no tenure. And people are going to beat me up because of it. But
Yeah.
I believe that if you don't do the job properly,
Mhm.
there should be no job security just
Yeah.
because you've been here for 20 years or 15 or 18. You
Yep.
should still want to teach. You should still want to impact the lives of those children. If I send my child to be with you for how many ever hours,
Mhm.
I don't want you to dismiss my child.
Yeah.
I want you to be there for them
Yep.
1,000%.
Yep. I
And,
agree with you.
but we need to change even like who's teaching our kids. So what? Guess what? You know why teachers are leaving? They're not valued.
Oh, 100%.
Second, they're not paid enough.
Yep.
Listen, what do we pay when we go out on a Friday night, a babysitter? We
Mhm.
pay them more than the teachers get paid.
I know.
Hello?
I know.
Hello?
I know. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And again, the requirements and the demands that we're putting on teachers, they're all stressed out too, and it's part of it is that there's such a shortage. It's, again, the value is same thing like with mental health workers. There's some, there are a lot that they just don't get paid well. And it's they leave the field because you can't survive. If you're working
Mm,
3 jobs just to live and support your family, that makes no sense,
no.
and yet we have people who are just making crazy amounts of money and, it's we value that, we don't value educators and
Not at
it's
all.
sad. So I try to be an advocate for them as much as I can, so that's a big
Yeah,
piece of what I
we
do.
all have to. We'll
Yeah,
listen.
yeah,
I have two boys, right?
yeah.
And when I sent them to school, you can tell who the good teachers were.
Mm,
They would even send pictures of home,
mhm.
like pictures of the kids being interactive. They would send them home. They
Yeah,
would send an email. Your son did this, but it wasn't that. Then you have other teachers who only reach out because maybe my child didn't behave
problem.
right,
Yep.
right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the teachers who send an email because your son did this and it was great,
yeah,
or your son, he participated in this. Those are the teachers who care, who
yep,
understand that, hey, you know what? I'm trusting you with my child,
mhm,
and I'm not going to be with my child for 8 hours, so I don't know what goes on.
yep.
I'm not a fly in the wall, and guess what? I can't
I don't
be.
wanna be and
I
can't, yeah,
don't right.
exactly.
And then the other thing is a lot of parents don't realize that. And I just had a conversation with a mom. God bless her. Because when she first brought her son to me, I said, no,
Yeah,
I don't take everybody, by the way. I don't. I'm very
yeah,
selective. And I said, no, he's too young. He's not following me. Come back. She came back a year later. And she goes, I said, I'm going to evaluate him. We're going to do a month and see how well he does
Yeah.
and how well you do, because I'm not just looking at the child, I'm looking at the parent. Do they participate? Do they come in? Are they willing? Do they show up on time? The whole thing. So after 2 months, I said, I'm going to accept him. She was overjoyed. And she called me into my office. She goes, do you have a minute? I have an office. I don't even know why I have an office. I never use it. But when somebody says to me, can we talk? I'm like, they want to talk in private. Okay, we'll go in the office.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm an open book. I talk to anybody anywhere. But she goes, I just wanted to, let you know what you've done for me. I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking, she's not happy. And she goes, you've changed my son. He not only has had tons of stomach problems, and sometimes the kid is in class, he's crying because he's getting these terrible cramps, but he's a trooper and he continues going through things. He'll be crying,
Yeah.
but he'll do punches, he'll do blocks. He's like, oh, and then and I'm like, oh my. So I give him standing ovations. I give him high fives. So she goes, not only have you allowed him to be here, which I want to thank you for, but you've changed him.
Yeah.
His attitude. But not only that, you physically changed him. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, he didn't drink water until he started coming to you. He would only have juices and milk, would never want to have water. And one day I noticed that I told all the kids, go get a water, go get a drink. He came back with a little bit of milk on his. So I said to him, what are you drinking? Milk? I said, oh, you need water. So he told his mother, Mom, I need to drink water. Sifu said I need to drink water.
Oh my goodness.
She said after he started drinking water, within a week and a half, he stopped having cramps.
Wow.
So she goes, I want to thank you. She goes, also, I quit my job. I'm like, really? Why? She goes, because of my son. I wanted to be there for him. She goes, I was making way over $200,000, but I quit my job because of him. So congratulations. I said, you're an amazing mom. I said, but he's in pre-K. She goes, yeah, he only goes half a day. I said, so when does he go? She goes, in September, he's going to be full-time. I said, oh, good. So maybe you'll go back to work. She goes, oh, I don't know. I said, I said, I got to commend you for being an incredible mom. But I said, if you want to be even a better mom, go back to work.
Yeah.
You have to take care of you. If he doesn't see that you struggled as a mom, he will never value the sacrifices you've made for him.
Yep.
Because if later on he tells everybody, oh, my mom's she doesn't do anything, she stays home, because that's what kids see. They don't realize that being a mom is a full-time job.
Oh, yeah.
So I said, if he doesn't see that you're struggling, that you're going to work, that it is not easy, he will never value the sacrifice you truly are making for him.
Yeah.
And she goes, I never saw it that way.
Wow.
Thank you for that insight.
That's
I said,
great.
yeah. So
That's awesome.
So when we think about the impact that we can change, not only for the children, and you do it also for the parents have to understand their value, what they bring to the table, right? As a parent.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's so important to, again, connect the dots. And parents are a huge piece of that. So, and we've got to support them. We can't just say, you have to do this. How can we make sure, and this is where, again, we get creative. How can we make sure that parents are feeling supported? Maybe this is other outside organizations and groups that we can bring into the conversation to really kind of help them. So yeah, it's important. So,
One last thing that you just made me think of is you said we have to support the parents.
mhm,
And I agree with you 100%. For example, my parents were, my mom was a teacher.
mm,
My dad was a principal of a school, but that was in Colombia.
mm.
When they came to the US, they were no longer educators in that realm. They
Oh,
did
yeah.
different things.
Yep.
So, would you believe they never once helped me with homework? Ever, ever,
Wow.
not once. So, when we think about helping a parent learn to help their child, because a lot of parents, I've even heard in fifth grade, they go, I don't remember that stuff. How am I going to help my child? Or even in seventh grade, eighth grade, how am I going to help my child? So maybe the teachers have to reach out to the parents and say, how can we help you help
Mhm,
your child? Because that's one of the things that I do constantly in my classes. I
mhm.
teach the parents how to help their children at home. I
Yep.
said, how's your child going to practice if you don't know the moves?
Right.
So I said, I'm going to teach it to you. So this is where I don't accept every parent who thinks I'm childcare. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not childcare. When you enroll here, it's a family thing. So I'm going to
Yep.
teach you how to work with your child. And the
Yep.
other thing is, most martial arts schools don't have homework. We
Mm.
have homework. We
Ah,
have practice sheets. The kids have to practice. They have to write down what they did at home.
yeah.
And then they have a one sheet for homework. We do a superhero sheet. So they have a superhero, like a whole thing, and then they have to write down, what they learned from that
Yeah.
lesson. So for me, making sure the parents are on board
Mhm.
with their child's education is huge because my parents were not there for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't remember a whole lot of, homework help, and yeah, that could be a whole other conversation too,
Mm,
in terms of homework. But yeah, we've gotta figure out, we have to look at not just their motivation. We have to look at, do they have the skills and the support to be able to do some of the things, and how can we help them? And having a whole school district being able to do that rather than
mm,
each individual. And that's kind of the piece, like, okay, rather than each individual, yes, each individual teacher should have a relationship, and communication with their
right.
parents. And we want to have an infrastructure that supports the parents. So, whatever their role is. So, yeah, those are the things that I try to put into schools, is like, how can we do this better? So,
Mm, yeah.
yeah,
It takes, as the old saying, it takes a village, right,
it
to raise a
does.
child.
Yep, absolutely. It does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. N, this has been a lot of fun, a fun conversation and an enlightening conversation. I
Yeah.
hope anybody, oh, I always tell people hashtag if you rewatch it, right?
Mhm.
Replay, hashtag replay, and then leave some comments. Let us know what you thought, but
Mhm.
always consider that our children are our future
Yep.
and we need to empower them
Mhm.
every day, not just once in a while, not on their birthday, not on a holiday, but every day. If you're
Yeah.
an uncle to a child, if you're an aunt, call them today. Listen, I had a message from my son today. He's 22 years old. He goes, Dad, I missed your call. Can you call me back as soon as you're done? Right? We need to have that connection.
Yep. Absolutely. It's relationships.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's the key.
Yes.
Hmm.
What advice would you give either a parent or a school teacher right now that they can leverage their lives today?
The most important thing is that you have to put your own oxygen mask on first. So,
Mm,
even just doing some simple things, such as deep breathing, just stop and take some deep breaths for yourself. Pause. It's okay to have silence. You don't have to have
mm,
every minute of the day. You don't want to have every minute of the day scheduled. If you're if the kids are scheduled that much, that's your schedule on top of it, and none of that's good for anyone. And
mm,
so though, you have to really look at allowing kids to be able to just be with you, just spend time just sitting and talking, or playing a game, anything. Just keep it simple and don't overthink it. But as part of that, you've got to take care of yourself first and make sure that kids see that and understand why you're doing that, because
Hmm.
that's important. And so give yourself some grace, let yourself be not okay, and talk about it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and ask for help. And so, yeah, put your own oxygen mask on
Yeah.
first.
Yeah, beautiful advice. Thank you, Dr. Ann. I
Thank
really,
you
really
so much.
appreciate you being here with me. And I know we met through the Playhouse group, great, great
Yeah.
group.
Yes.
So I really appreciate you. Have
Yep.
yourself an exceptional day. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. You as well. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.